All right, we be live. Hi.
Welcome, everybody, to our Ask Us Anything episode. This is where you can ask ex Muslims anything. It's the middle of December. You know, it's a great time of the year. My name is Ali Rizvi. With me is Armin Navabi. Armin, how are you?
Good, good.
Right, and this is a public live stream. So whoever you want to bring on, and let's do this. We're gonna. This is we do this like once or twice a month, in the middle of the month. We let you ask our questions. And if you are a patron, usually, we answer our patrons' questions. I mean, patrons can go on to patreon.com/SJME. And for as little as $1, they can get 5 live streams a month, with all these great guests and great topics, and watch and interact on video like you are right now. But you would be able to do that much more often on specific topics. So, and if you post your questions on Patreon ahead of time, we will prioritize them and we'll get to them first. So,
Yeah,
let's
so
do this.
there's two benefits for asking your questions as a patron. First, you get priority answers. And then secondly, if you can't be live here with us, then you could just send us your questions ahead of time and we will still answer them. So we will go through, we have 3 patron questions today. We'll answer these, and then as soon as we're done, Mars is here. Hi, Mars. Mick is here. As soon as we're done with these, we'll go to the live chat questions. One thing I suggest to our patrons is to make their questions smaller, so it doesn't, like right now the first patron question is in 2 pieces, right? Hold on, let me actually make this just yeah, it's in 2 pieces. I should have only posted it on. Oh yeah, I can actually just post them on Facebook, because on Facebook it would be 1 piece. Okay, I got it. Next time. Here, there we go. That's much better.
All
From
right.
now I'll post them. Okay, so here's our first patron question by James. Ali, do you want to read it?
Yes. So James is asking, what is your take on Majid Nawaz and his attitudes and positions to Islam at the moment? Is the winding up of the Quilliam Institute or the Quilliam Foundation the end of the most prominent Islamic reformist movement? My God, Armin, you're gonna love this. And what might be the perception of of, what might be the perceptions of Islamists and ramifications for liberal Muslims? Best, James McCaffrey. Thank you, James, for that question. And well, what is our take on Majid Nawaz and his attitudes, positions to Islam at the moment? And what do you think the most prominent Islamic reformist movement? So can I give some background on this, because Armin's going to basically answer this question, I think, and he should. But when did we do that Niagara Falls thing? Remember when we did was that the non-conference?
Oh yeah,
2016 or something like that. 2017.
I think so. Yeah,
Or maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah. So a few years ago, me and Armin and Majid were all at the same conference, and we spoke. And Majid had come up and he was making his case for reform, and Armin went up and made his case against reform, and it was beautiful. And then after that, we had a panel discussion where it was the 3 of us, and it was Raheel Raza, right? It was also part of the reform movement, and we had a fascinating discussion. So I think that yeah, there's a lot of history there and a lot of views. So Armin, go ahead. What do you think? How did things turn out eventually?
Well, I mean, do you want me to like dance on the grave of Islamic movement and piss on it, and then
the reform movement?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of the reform movement?
Yeah.
I mean,
You've
yeah,
been
of
digging
course,
the
of
grave
course.
for a long time. Now you might as well dance
Yes.
on it.
Yes, and piss on it at the same time. Yeah, I would definitely like to do that. Yes, this is great. I told you this will fail, and it did. However, we can't. We have to know that this is not something that will go away. Okay, like if you think that this was a thing that now just got defeated and now it's done, you don't know your Islamic history. You don't even know you don't know how the history of religion, right? This modern Islamic reform movement has been one of many attempts when Islam has been challenged, or any other religion, right? When you have a religion that is, there's certain norms and traditions and understanding and interpretation of how things are supposed to be. Society evolves and moves on. There's always not always, there's often 2 different reactions to it, and it creates 2 movements. one that wants to become more fundamental and more literalist, and the other one that wants to be more pragmatic and act like the religion itself is in line with the new understanding of how things are. Okay, and this fork has happened many times before with Judaism, with Christianity, with Islam, and even with Hinduism, as me and Susanna are recently learning about. Um, so the problem with the fundamentalist fork, the direction and reaction is that it's usually very aggressive, and very harmful, and tries to hold society back. The problem with the pragmatic reform movement, so if you think about Islam, the fundamental reform movement would be something like Wahhabism, and the pragmatic reform movement would be something like Majid Nawaz and Qualam. The problem with that is that society, the pragmatic one is more successful at holding society back, because the nature of religion as a whole is to just drag society down and not let things move forward, right? The fundamentalist one actually, to some extent, helps society move forward faster because of the how damaging and damning it is to society. People would be more encouraged to let religion go. Like, for example, look at how many people became ex-Muslims as a reaction to seeing ISIS, for example, right? But the pragmatic one holds society back because it tries to keep religion relevant, superstition relevant, nonsense relevant, faith relevant. So it's very damaging in that aspect of it. And that's why we attack it, and we try to not let these reform movements work. So what I'm saying is that this is such a fundamental part of how religion responds to threats, that you can't just think like, okay, the Qualam failed, Majid Nawaz failed, so we're good now. No, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's going to be many other similar reactions coming from. What me and what we have noticing and been noticing is that the more clever reform attempts, uh, because Majid Nawaz's attempt at reform was so moronic. Okay, like it wasn't even intended to towards Muslims who were fundamentalists, right? It was directed towards Westerners, as a way to suggest maybe Islam is okay, right? If for a reform movement to be successful, it has to have an audience of fundamentalist Muslims who are considering to become less fundamentalist because of it. That wasn't even the target audience for Majid Nawaz's reform movement, right? So the more clever, Susanna, help me out with some names here because I'm not good with remembering names. I mean, Yasser Ghadi is the one that we all know. Like the more clever reform movements are the speakers or preachers or scholars who come from the fundamentalist side, um, from a scholarly perspective, and they are trusted within more mainstream Muslims as yes, thank you, Susanna, in the live chat. She's referring to Shabar Ali. So Yasser Ghadi and Shabar Ali, these are people who look fundamentalists, sound fundamentalists, have the credentials of scholars of fundamentalists, and people and mainstream Muslims don't trust Majid Nawaz. But Yasser Ghadi and Shabir Ali, these are people with mainstream Muslim audience, and they are a lot more clever in such coming up with ways to make Islam move on to the 21st century without acting like they're reforming anything. So the main failure of Majid Nawaz is that, oh yeah, we're reforming Islam, and Muslims are like, this doesn't need reform. This is the religion of God. Do you want to reform God's words like this? Like that's the most, if you understand anything about Islam, you know that is the most obviously wrong way of going about it. Like even if you look at historically reform movements, the people themselves didn't call it reform. Like other people call it reform, because it's nobody who wants to reform Islam, if they want to successful, will act like they're reforming Islam. They will act like this was always like this, right? Always, this is you're bringing Islam back to what it was supposed to be. Okay. um so yeah, obviously Majid's attempt was a failure, but we have to be now more worried about a lot more clever, a lot more successful ways of reforming, and we have to call it out, and we have to call it a reform because they don't call it a reform, and show what they're actually doing. and these two people are the more important, like
Yeah.
Yasser Ghadi and Shabir Ali. But yeah.
And now, yeah. So I want to say one more thing. Like, aside from everything that you're saying, is that you're absolutely right when it comes to credibility. One of the biggest issues I had with this reform movement was happening with Majid and the rest of the crew, and and then these guys, a lot of these guys are friends, so we do like them personally, but um, was that it was geared towards an audience that was primarily Western. So they were kind of preaching to the crowd in a way. They wanted to speak to liberals in the West. They wanted to speak to like all kinds, but it wasn't. They weren't really getting a lot of traction, as Armin said, in the Muslim crowd. Who has been successful at that? Like the ex-Muslim movement. So now, if you see some of this new generation of like some of the most prominent sort of ex-Muslim activists and YouTubers, Abdullah Samir kind of came from that society, right? You've got like Apostate Prophet. You've got this guy, Abdullah Gondal. You've got Haris Sultan. I mean, these are people who are actually engaging. They're engaging with very prominent sort of the people who are popular, at least on the popular stage, and they're having conversations with people in the Muslim community. They're bringing them into the fold. They're bringing them into the conversation, and they're bringing more credibility to it. So, Armin said, right from the beginning that this reform thing isn't going to work. The ex-Muslim thing is much more likely to work because it's just more honest, and that's true. And people who are from the other side, the super religious type Muslims, they respect the honesty. They respect it enough to want to debate it, and the reform thing just doesn't have that kind of heft.
One thing I was wrong about, that I'm happy that I was wrong about, is that I agreed with them that the ex-Muslim movement is not going to have the mass numbers that people think. Like, we're not going to see like a half of an entire Islamic country leave Islam, right? But what I would say, like, as much as that's not going to happen anytime soon, it's going to be a lot more successful than the reform movement. And the reform movement shouldn't even be successful because that's how you keep religion alive, right?
Yeah.
The thing I was wrong about is that no, apparently half of an entire Islamic country did leave Islam. All right.
Most of it, right? Like Iran.
Yeah, that's so.
Iran is a Muslim minority country. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, within one generation, like so. If anything, I was being optimistic about the ex-Muslim movement, and I was like, the reform movement is like holding us back. If anything, I wasn't optimistic enough. Like, I was like, people thought I'm exaggerating the numbers. Apparently, no, I'm actually sure.
Yeah.
And actually, the interesting thing is that in a country like Iran, for example, the whole suggestion of reforming Islam is actually a taboo. It's a dirty word, right? Like, even discussing reform, you would like people who are ex-Muslims, people who have left Islam. If you were like, hey, can maybe we should reform Islam, they would like, it's kind of like blasphemy in Iran among ex-Muslims and atheists. Like, you would be one thing. For example, I was telling the Persian audience on an Atheist Republic's Persian show was that I had a discussion with Sam Harris, and I had some disagreements with him, right, on the show, right, on Secular Jihadists, right, and people in the live chat were laughing at me and making fun of me. And they was like, Armin, who the hell do you think you are to have a disagreement with Sam Harris? Like, how arrogant do you have to be for you to have Sam Harris on and have a disagreement with him? Like, how arrogant, right? And then I told them, well, let me tell you, because I knew if I tell them, they would be like, oh crap, right? Because I knew my audience. This is a Persian atheist community. Well, let me tell you what the disagreement was, and you guys could tell me which side you're on. The disagreement was Sam Harris was on the side of reforming Islam, and I was against it. And then I started laughing at the audience, because tell me, like, which side are you guys on, huh? Like, people, because people in the live chat were like, oh my God, because they hate anybody suggesting that Islam could be reformed. So I was laughing at them for suggesting that I was on the wrong side, because it's so, and it was so predictable that they would be against the Islamic reform. Anyways, Ali, do you want anything before we?
No, I think that's it. And there's I guess I'll just add, we have to mention that, and we're not going to get into too much detail because we can't talk about it here on YouTube, but Majid has gone in a different sort of direction. I think many of you are
Oh yeah.
familiar with it. So I mean, that's something I can't really relate to. I think it's strange. I think that even Sam has misgivings about, just wondering what happened there.
Yeah, he's
So
gone.
yeah, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, but you know, let's see. Hopefully,
Yeah.
maybe we can talk to him again soon. See where his mind's at.
He won't. He's a coward.
Uh,
Um.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Anyways, can we? Okay, let's go to the next question.
next patron question is from who's that? I don't know who this is from. Okay, so I think it's from D Boudreau. So with more and more
D.
yeah, with more and more journalists being killed and detained around the world, as well as crackdowns on social media by governments, what is your outlook on getting and sharing information in the future? Oh, can I start with this, Armin? I have something to say. Um, so D, I think that this is, when we talk about more and more journalists being killed and crackdowns on social media. First of all, the crackdowns on social media, it's a big mess. The whole social media trying to figure out how they're going to regulate content. Clearly we know about that. Armin knows about it. I've been through it. We've all been through it. But it was before, if you look back on it, right before, it wasn't just, I mean, journalists weren't even allowed to do a lot of things. I mean, everything was much, much more curated. Content was much more controlled before the internet and before social media. There's a lot of things you see right now, like, for example, the pictures of war out of Gaza, right? That's not something that we saw in any newspapers or magazines, especially in Western media, or actually in any media, really, when I was growing up in the 80s before the internet. We didn't used to see that. Pictures of the protests in Iran that you see on Twitter and YouTube and everything, we never ever used to see that. So there is an aspect of it now that you actually have more information despite this crackdown. And maybe you have the crackdown happening in response to the fact that all these images, they can't control it. They're still trying to figure it out. Right. So I think that overall, we do have more information now. We have more access to information now because the average, it's so strange. They used to talk about the corporatocracy and corporations keeping down the common man. And now that the primary business model for the most successful corporations in the world, like Apple and Facebook and Twitter, is to give a voice to the common man. And you're seeing this around the world. You've had entire, the Arab Spring, the downfall of Mubarak, downfall of Gaddafi. A lot of these things came around because of WikiLeaks. They came around because of Facebook, because of like all these social media organizations, and all the Iranian protests, the Green Revolution in 2009, and so on. So this is something that there is more information now. There is a more of a problem with misinformation, right? Where it's harder to tell misinformation from true information. That's a little bit more of an issue that everybody's trying to figure out and kind of failing at from time to time. And I hope they do figure it out in the future. But I don't think that the situation is worse now. I think it's actually much better than it used to be in the past when I was growing up. That's my view.
It is a lot better.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's very flawed.
Of course.
It's very flawed, given that as much as Facebook and YouTube and Twitter have made things a lot better. What we want to see now is moving forward to a situation where we don't have these giant institutions have so much say in what we get to say and how we get to say it, right? And you will everything is central, like, because at the end of the day, as long as these are for-profit institutions, and what matters is their ability to be able to operate inside India, inside Pakistan, inside China, because they're driven by profit. There's no like ideological goal that these institutions have. There's not a meta narrative behind what they do that celebrates, I don't know, freedom, democracy. And again, I'm not trying to attack, it's how a for-profit company is supposed to operate. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, these are evil institutions. It's just a DNA of a for-profit institution not to make these the final goal. The final goal is to make profit. And there's a problem when a for-profit institution, at the end of the day, with like a very few group of people that are in charge of making sure that these companies are making profit, are in charge of the largest environments, where what they say is the final, is the final decision on what conversations are allowed and in what direction, right? That's a problem. And again, I don't want to I know, like, if somebody might get, so a lot of people might get frustrated by me saying this, because it just sounds so futury. But I am hoping that the blockchain world becomes a thing. You know, I'm hoping that we do see more and more platforms built on the different blockchains, because that seems to be the answer. Decentralization seems to be the answer, right? And I don't know if this is going to, I'm not trying to make any predictions if this is going to happen or not, right? But if you think about with free if you think about the movements that made not the world a better place, all of them had a decentralization theme, right? Democracy grew in places where centralization of power was not possible. Markets and economies grew when the centralization of capital was not possible, right? And I think access to information and freedom of speech and freedom of knowledge is also going to grow in environments where centralization of control over information is not going to be possible. And I think the response to that is going to be the blockchain technology, right? The way I think about it is that we had the industrial revolution, which increased access to energy, and then we had the digital revolution, which increased everyone's access to information. And now we're going through the blockchain revolution, which could potentially increase people's access to freedom. And again, if this happens, there's nothing that could stop it, right? One thing we are doing at the Atheist Republic is that we're experiencing with social media platforms that are still at their infancy, but they're on the blockchain. And I don't know which social media platforms are going to be successful. But so right now, for example, Atheist Republic is on this social media platform called Peaked, Peakd. And like, it's very anti-censorial because it can't be. For example, when you post something on a social media that is based on the blockchain, it's not it's not anti-censorial because the people at the top are deciding not to censor things. It's anti-censorial because they can't censor things. When something is on the blockchain, no force on the planet can remove it, right? So it's anti-censorial, and also it's very flat, as in there's no centralized authority. Like, everybody owns a piece of the social media platform. Like, there's not, the employees don't own it, the people who are using it own, everybody owns a piece of it. Everybody has a say in what the direction the company is going, and everybody is also getting paid for it. Like, when you have decentralized social media platforms, the shareholders, the stakeholders, the users, the staff, and the advertisers, they're all the same people. Everybody is like, it's a mix, it's all over the place. Like, everybody has a stake in the entire future. And with so it's just like, the reason why I don't want to talk about it that much, because it just seems like too good to be true. Like, it just seems like the whole anti, communists seem to be like, oh, we're against hierarchy, right? And we were saying, like, well, it's impossible not to have hierarchy, right? But now we seem like, apparently, capitalism is actually might end up bringing you institutions and decentralized autonomous organizations. They call them DAOs. That all the promises that communism was offering and never seemed impossible to be true. It seems like we could eventually get there with capitalism if blockchain becomes a thing. Like, guys, if you want to know more about this, go look at DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, which is going to be only possible through the blockchain. Anyways, I'm talking about it's too much, because I knew if I get started on this, I'm going to go on So I'm going to stop here. But again, I think the future is bright if this is going to be a thing. I think at some point, if the world moves to a metaverse, to the blockchain, we're going to have a place where censorship is going to become impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry if I went too long.
That's all right. So, music guy
Yeah,
is
last
saying,
question.
it's the next
Let me
patron question. So, this is, I
Okay,
think,
last
our.
patron question, and then we're going to go to the live chat question. I'm just
That's
posting it right
correct.
now.
So,
There
this
we
is
go.
music guy. He's saying, Armin, what are your thoughts on the Iran nuclear deal as of late? What do you personally think will happen if it falls through? Would Iran run to China to accomplish their goal?
Okay, so guys, when it comes to the role of China and Russia in this whole nuclear talks, um, it's a lot of people assume that Russia and China, because they have a lot of anti-US positions. On this, they're going to take Iran's side. I mean, the goals that China and Russia have over Iran does not completely align with the United States, but none of them want a nuclear Iran. Okay, as much as Iran uses China and Russia as a balancing tool against the United States because they could still deal with them, the Islamic Republic of Iran is completely alone in its nuclear ambitions. Like, this is something they're all united on. Russia, China, and Europe and the United States, they're all completely united on not wanting a nuclear Iran. Um, the way you have to look at China and Russia's role in this whole negotiations is that they want Iran to be their role in this whole negotiation is for Iran not to have normal relationships with Europe and the US, but not so much. So they want to make sure that the trade and negotiation. So they want to make sure that Iran could be used as a weapon in the region against Europe and the United States, but they don't want to go as far as making Iran powerful enough to have nuclear weapons. Okay, that's too much. Right? They want Iran to be like this injured dog that is weak enough for it not to be a problem for them, but still but not in the but also not too weak that it's dead, not so much that it's like completely useless as a proxy against the West, right? So somewhat of a nuance, somewhat of a like a chess piece against Europe and United States, but not a nuclear Iran, right? So that's how you have to look at their ambitions of China and Russia when it comes to looking at Iran, which is like kind of evil, right? If you think about it, because the Iranian people have to pay for that, for their country not to be in this like um middle zone. But let me actually see what the rest of the question. What are your thoughts on Iran's nuclear deal as of late? For a lot of people, like one thing else I want to add to this, because I could talk to this for hours, and I think we're going to eventually have a live stream about this soon because of the direction that the nuclear talks are going. But the only thing I want to add before we move on is that be mindful of people like Kyle Kulinski who are going to tell you that this is going to be United States' fault because they should have just jumped in. They could have just like undid what Trump did, right? Like Biden could have just undid what Trump did and jumped back into a deal. Right now, the only reason why a deal is not happening is because the Islamic Republic of Iran is asking for things that are impossible to give. They are making it the way that is the deal is working right now, like the way the negotiations are working right now. The most reasonable interpretation of it is that Iran is trying to not make the deal happen, to delay, not take the negotiations seriously, so that they could enrich uranium as much as possible, enhance their technology as much as possible, and get closer to a nuclear weapon as much as possible, so that if they eventually get forced to doing negotiations, they have more leverage and they have higher negotiating power to work with. Or if the negotiations fail completely, completely. They're so close to having a nuclear weapon that it's impossible to become like a North Korea situation where you can't really threaten them anymore because they're already so close to a nuclear weapon. The scary part is that Israel just recently came out and just be like, there's no way that we're going to let that happen. Like, Israel is promising that they're not going to do like small attacks here and there if Iran actually gets close to a nuclear weapon. They're saying they're going to go to a full on head to head all out war with Iran. Like, they are promising that there is no way that they're going to allow that to happen. So this could, like, it's not an exaggeration to say that this is making an outright war where, like, you have Iran, maybe Syria and Lebanon or Hezbollah on one side, and Israel, United States, and Europe on the other side. I'm not saying that's likely, but I'm saying that if the negotiations don't go through, they are making the possibility of that, more likely than I ever thought was possible, right? So this is very scary right now. The problem is that there are many in Iran's politics is very complicated. There are elements with Iran's politics that uh, wouldn't mind the sanction, like would prefer the sanctions to continue. And also, I just want to say this. I know this might just because Trump might come back into power in 2024. This is all Trump's fault. Okay, this works so much in favor of all the hardliners in Iran. Um, you know, once the negotiations get escalate, we're going to have an entire stream about this. But we wouldn't have been here if Trump didn't give the Iran all the opportunity to enrich uraniums to this point. As bad as, like, you could criticize Obama's deal and say that there was a flaw here, there was a flaw there, they shouldn't have given this and this and that. It held Iran back for a while, and now Iran is going to be in a much more aggressive position because of Trump pulling out of the deal. It was absolutely a wrong decision. It was absolutely horrible, and now, like, we have to deal with that mess. If this turns into a war, basically Trump is responsible for bringing, like, it's going to be insane. It's going to be insane. It already is, but it could escalate even more. Anyways, I talked for too long, but yeah, we're gonna have an entire stream for this at some point. Ali, you're muted.
All right, so let's move on to, now we're on to our live questions here. What do we got?
So I have started them. So there's a new feature where we could, like, kind of bookmark them, so which is really good. Here,
okay.
Want to read this
Louis Torres is asking. He's like, I have a question for you guys. Oh, great. Here's a question. What is the future of secularism in the Islamic world? I'm going to actually keep this really straightforward and simple. As Armin mentioned earlier, Iran, now we know through polling, we've always suspected is actually a Muslim minority country. So I think secularism, the future of secularism, is very bright across all religious groups, not just Muslims, all religious groups. Younger generations, age 30 and below, are leaving religion in droves. Okay, by the masses. I think it's only like up to 30, 35, 40% of millennials and below happen to be non-religious now across the board, and it's no different in the Muslim world. We don't have any reason to think it would be any different in the Muslim world right now. So the future of the secularism in the Islamic world, and this is, I think, one of those things that we used to talk about before. Remember, Armin, when we started the Muslim Enlightenment thing, and I always used to say, well, just about 30 years ago, Salman Rushdie was thrown, he had to go into hiding because of the fatwa and everything, and look at us now. But we were both, I think, a little bit skeptical about how fast this would happen, but I think it's happening much, much faster than I imagined, and I was fairly optimistic about it. So I think, I don't think it's a matter of, I actually think secularism is official secularism with the government separating. I don't know. That's a tough one. Yeah. But in terms of the way that people are thinking, and remember, the majority of the populations, up to 70 to 80% of the populations in these countries, is under the age of 30. And that's the group that's actually leaving the religion in droves.
So secularism and atheism is going to grow significantly. However, I don't assume that religion is going to go anywhere. What I'm what I'm guessing is going to be a lot of tensions, right? So
Yeah.
it's not going to be like atheism and secularism is growing and religion is just going to be like, oh yeah, I guess we're less relevant now. I think because of the growth of atheism and secularism, um, and also like the religion itself, like there's going to be a lot more fundamentalism and radicalism in the religion. It's not going to be like the rest of the religious world is just going to be like this whole liberal version of it. I think there's going to be a lot of polarization, and there's going to be a major conflict between people who want to move past religion and people who want to double down. So it's not going to be an easy, like smooth, like moving away from religion. I don't think. We'll see. Okay. All right, here's another question by Susanna.
Susanna is saying, does Majid even talk about Islam anymore? It's not the cool thing anymore. I mean, Islam, like remember the good old days in the 2015, I think maybe even through 2016, when every time you'd hear about an attack or a bombing, or we'd be like, oh, it's got to be did the guy say Allahu Akbar? Is it a brown guy? Is it a Muslim guy? And now what happens is anytime you hear about that, it's almost always like a white nationalist or an incel. I mean, that's how it works. It's very rarely now. Well, I mean, we're not talking about the rest of the world. We're talking about mainly in Europe and the US. And even in the rest of the world, it seems like a lot of these Islamic terrorist attacks are kind of winding down.
This is why I hate, I think like, it's not like he cares. I think it's, I don't know. I don't want to make any accusations.
Opportunism.
But yeah, he's just like chasing after what's hot rather than what matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on.
Mir Jalal is saying, what do you think your activism would be like without the internet? I imagine you guys somewhere like Speaker's Corner on a pedestal with waving to the crowd with your book in hand. I have a lot of respect for people who did this stuff before the internet, right? Like Salman Rushdie, for instance, who really made waves. But it's there's something I've quoted this a million times. One of my favorite things that anybody has ever said, actually, and Maryam Namazi said this. She said that the internet is doing to Islam today what the printing press did to Christianity in the past. And I think that's absolutely true. The printing press ultimately brought about the Age of Enlightenment. It opened up Christian scripture to everybody, right? It made it accessible to people. The Dark Ages of Europe, the Christendom, all the oppressive theocracies in Europe at the time, they were challenged by people who were suddenly discovering these new ideas and engaging with these new ideas. The printing press did that. And now you have the same thing happening, in the Muslim world as people are connecting online. I wrote in my book about it. I haven't mentioned my book in a very long time. So here it's in context, is that I actually wrote about this in my book in terms of like when we were living in Saudi Arabia, what it was actually like, because it's hard for people to remember who didn't live through it. What it was like without the internet, and now what it's like with it. I thought about this a lot, and I wrote extensively about it. So if you do get a chance, read it. I think it's completely transformed everything.
I just want to add, I think we might be dead. I mean, without the internet, doing activism would have put us more in physical contact with our opposition. So I think we would possibly be dead.
We would be.
Yeah. Anyways,
All right. So Susanna saying, have you been paying attention to the elections in Libya? Gaddafi's son. Hello. I know he's running. The other thing I know, Armin, is that they're holding this election, the first round of it, on Christmas Eve. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know
December
that.
24th.
I know Gaddafi's son was running. He was wearing like his, when he was announced, like when he was like filing the papers and stuff, he was wearing like clothes like his dad. Did you see that? Like the traditional.
I can see him. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi is his name. Yeah.
Yeah. He was wearing. He looked exactly like his dad's outfit and everything. It's like, I don't know. Was that like a good strategy? Do you want to look like Gaddafi when you're like, I don't know.
Well, it depends. It depends on whether people are missing him now, considering what happened afterwards.
Also, like, isn't he like wanted for human rights violations? Like, can he even run? I have to look into the details.
It's Libya.
But I think once once the elections, we get closer to it, or maybe after it, we're gonna do a coverage on the details of that. Yeah. But yeah, Susanna, thank you for paying attention to that. Isn't Haftar running as well?
Who?
Yeah, the guy that was like the general, the guy that was.
Khalifa Haftar. He's running.
Yeah, he's running. He's running as well. Oh my
Oh my
god.
god, this
Oh
is a
my
total
god.
shit show. This is gonna be. We
Yeah.
have to cover this. This will be
Yeah,
fucking
we have to
right.
cover
It'll
this.
be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, Susanna's confirming he is wanted, but they still rule that he could run. Oh my god, he's wanted for
I
war
told you
crimes.
it's Libya. This is Libya.
Yeah. Oh my. Okay, but I thought the elections are like internationally recognized by the UN and everything, and they're still letting him run.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. This is gonna be this is gonna be crazy. Libya is like the amount of people involved in Libya is so much that like it's such a mess. Usually, okay, here's a tip. Usually, when a country is trying to like become stable, the number of different countries that have like interest in the direction that your country goes, like if you increase the foreign actors, if you increase from 10 to like 8, the chances of stability lowers extremely. Like in Libya, you have like Turkey, you have the UAE, you have Saudi Arabia, you have United States, you have France for some goddamn reason, right? Everyone, and you have the UN. France like taking the side opposed to the United Nations. Like you have so many different actors there, and you want to make sure that things don't become stable. Just like have conflicting interests by foreign actors. That's how you get instability. So yeah, great. But yeah, I mean, people are still hopeful that finally we have something happening. At least that's a good thing. So that's good news. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So next question.
Jim Waxer is saying, is it just anecdotal? Anecdotal. Oh, anecdotal, probably.
Anecdotal, I think. Yeah.
I wish it was anecdotal. Is it just anecdotal? But many people I've come across who left religion lean libertarian or hyper individualist and feel little duty to government and feel individual rights trump collective goals. So I don't really think that that's the case. I mean, if you look at the actual data on this and the surveys, people who leave religion are all kinds of people. I mean, Ayn Rand was an atheist, and she was like very libertarian, conservative. Very libertarian, actually, hardcore libertarian. You have people like Bernie Sanders is an atheist. He's super left, right? There are many people who've left religion and who are not religious, and they're basically as diverse as anybody else. But generally, with ex-Muslims and with people who come out of fundamental backgrounds like fundamental Christianity, Catholicism, when they do leave religion, or when they become more secular, even if they don't leave it completely, they do tend to lean more liberal. But it's not a hard and fast rule. We know that now.
We don't have any. I mean, maybe we do, but I haven't. For you to be able to answer a question like this, you need stats, right? Without stats, everything would be just guesswork. If it is true, I don't think, maybe not libertarian. Maybe it's just like, okay, so maybe like when it comes to social rules, I don't know about economic. I don't think like leaving religion would have that much of an impact over your economic views, right? So when it comes to economic views, I think you're going to be maybe a more distributed spectrum of people where they lie, whether they're going to be left leaning or right leaning. But when it comes to social views on social rules, I would assume that a lot of people who leave religion would be more liberal, right? And that's because they're, again, I don't have any stats to back this off, but I just think like when you leave an authoritarian system who tells you what to do and how to behave, and you're leaving that, you're probably not going to be very likely to be interested in other forms of control over your behavior, right?
Yeah.
So that it might have an impact in that way. But yeah, that's what I would guess. But for you to be able to answer that, you actually need stats. Everything else is just guesswork. Anyways, here's this.
Self-Guide NYC. When will you have heroes Sam Harris and Charles Murray of bell curve fame come to explain why Pakistan ranks number 66 in the world on IQ? Is it biological? Or so we have our first troll. Yes, I love this. This is great.
Oh no.
So Self-Guide NYC. Okay, I'm just going to explain this really quick, right? So here's the thing. Is IQ and intelligence biological overall?
Be right back.
Yes, largely. Okay, so what happens is it's like height, right? It's like height. Height is biological. You have a predetermined height genetically. Now, you will reach that maximum potential if you have good nutrition. If you don't have good nutrition and you're raised with suboptimal nutrition, you won't reach that height, that maximum height. So is it biological? Yes, it's biologically determined, your maximum level. Is there an environmental element to it? Yes, there is. Because if you don't get the right kind of nutrition and the right kind of, circumstances in your environment for you to be able to reach your height potential, you won't reach it. Okay. So that is the thing. Now, why is it biological? If I give you an extra chromosome, if you give you an extra chromosome 21, what's going to happen to you? You're going to drop 30 points in IQ. Okay. If I had to have certain mutations and I give you Angelman syndrome, you're going to drop several points in IQ. There are kids who are like 3 years old who can do 3-digit multiplications. So they can memorize 2,000 digits of pi, right? They can play piano like Mozart. So there is a heavy biological association with IQ, but to realize it, you need the environmental elements like nutrition. For like you'd have for height. To realize that you do need environmental aspects to maximize that potential.
I don't think that's the question he's asking, Ali.
I know. I'm getting to it right now. So, because I know what he's saying. He's talking about how these guys, they talk about the racial differences. Now, in Charles Murray of the Bell Curve, right, and I disagree with him on a lot of things. Okay, he did say that there's a genetic and an environmental, both of these elements that go into the IQ, right? And then he was talking about racial differences. Now we know that in the last 25 to 30 years, that gap between different races, especially blacks and whites, that IQ gap is becoming smaller. So we don't know right now, what the answers are. No, anybody who says that they know, it's not as definitive, right? And there is every reason to think that there is an environmental. There's the same thing that's happening with height, is that it's not being maximized.
Let me actually. Okay, let's do this more simple. Okay, just because something is based on genetics, it doesn't mean the correlation of how it's distributed is going to match ethnicities. Okay, so you know what I mean? Like, yes, is IQ based on genetics have an influence on IQ? Yes, but again, the distribution of that could be even among different ethnicities, even though it's genetical, right? It doesn't mean it's correlated. And one thing else I want to point to is that it's amazing that you mentioned Pakistan, given that the same ethnic distribution in Pakistan is what we have in India. Okay, so India is not number 66. So given that Pakistan is number 66 and India isn't, that should give you.
We don't even know if Pakistan's number 66. I mean, all of these things.
Yeah, like whatever it is. Whatever Pakistan is, given that India is ahead in many different things. But you could see, like, people say, "Oh, Armin, Pakistan is a mix of different ethnicities." You can't even talk about it like that. Yeah, but whatever it is, it's almost the same group of people that are in India, right? And you could see that the averages are going to be different. So you can see that it's going to be environmental factor that are the main indicators. Or here's a better example: North Korea and South Korea, right? Or okay, actually, North Korea and South Korea, not just IQ, height, right? If you look, height is something that is based on genetics. But if you look at the average height in North Korea, is much lower than the average height in South Korea. So even something that is genetical is. You could see that environmental factor have such a heavy, such a major effect on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
People in North Korea and South Korea are, other than what has happened in recent history, they have the same history, they have the same culture, they had the same culture, they were exposed to the same geopolitical factors, and they have the same ethnicity. Yet even their average heights are massively different, like very different. So you can see the influence of environmental factor being so massive, right?
Yeah, that's a great
example. So
anyway,
okay, we got a super chat though. We have to address the super chat.
Excellent. Thank you very much for P. I guess this is P. So he's saying, or they're saying, it's a year end. What is the one thing we're not talking about, but we really should be? Ooh, thanks. Armin, go first.
I already talked about. Okay.
Blockchain.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't want to be repetitive, so I would say AI is probably something that we should be talking about. I would want to say climate change, but we are talking about climate change, so people are talking about climate change, so that's a good thing. So the main issues: Yemen, human rights violations, and so human rights wise, the situation in Yemen and China needs to be talked more about, right? Also in Syria. Um, Afghanistan, right? So those are the things that human rights wise, economy wise, needs to be talked about. These are the main priorities. Threats to the world: AI and climate change. Climate change, we are talking about it, so AI is something that more people should be talking about. um, and optimism for the future, things that could save us from a lot of the harm, as blockchain technology. People are talking about that. So he's saying like not talking about. So among the things that we should be talking, more people should be talking about, but are not. It would be AI and human rights violation. China, more people are talking about China's human rights violations. Yemen has been forgotten completely. Afghanistan, there's somewhat of a discussion about it. So the one that is forgotten the most is Yemen. So AI and Yemen, I would say.
Mhm.
Yeah. What about you? What do you
Yeah.
say?
So, yeah, I think there are several things. I think a lot of it is, I think that mental health is something. I know that people talk about it. There's a lot of sort of inspirational stuff on Instagram and everything, but I think that talking about mental health, talking about especially youth, the kind of things that they're dealing with, suicide rates, those are the kinds of things I think that we need to be talking about more openly. It's almost taboo to talk about it because I think that any discussion of it is going to lead to more people doing it, which to some extent is true. But I think that's a conversation that we're really, really missing out on. That's very important right now.
Yeah.
Music guy is saying, "What I'd like to know is what the common people of Iran feel about this. Feel about what?
Oh, then about the nuclear
Ah,
discussions. I think the favor the people are looking at it less and less favorable. I think like there used to be some support for Iran's nuclear and peaceful nuclear energy, so-called peaceful nuclear energy, because people are like, why can't we have it? But now the support for that has gone very, very low. And people are not even looking every like if you look at most people, more and more people in Iran see the all of the problems that we're having in the country as a result of governments, management and bad decisions, rather than trying to be like, oh yeah, no, we need nuclear energy because we are like we deserve that and stuff like that. They're saying there was like the nuclear energy, all of this nuclear ambitions by the government has never brought anything but misery to Iran. Like it was definitely not worth it. Everybody can see that none of this was ever worth it. And this was like it wasn't ever about serving Iranian people. So it was about Iran's government getting to the point where they can throw their weight around the region. That was the main goal. If it was anything, if it was ever about benefiting the people, they would have abandoned this a long time ago. Given that the track record it has, like people can see that now. Most people can see that at all, not everyone. So yeah, that's what they think. Anyways, let's go move on.
all right. Viraj is saying a lot of schizophrenic patients have religious delusions. Do you think they would have been better off without having a religious upbringing? They would
Oh
have
yeah,
still, huh?
no, yeah. Every time you have a mental problem, if you add religion to it, it will become a bigger problem. Just
Become a
like
bigger
just like
problem.
everything. Yeah, like yeah. If you have like mental issues, add religion to it and see the problem become 10 times worse.
Right. And that's, I
Yeah,
mean, we're talking about a societal scale. Not as far as the patients themselves, I mean, they would still be schizophrenic.
yeah,
Schizophrenia
yeah.
doesn't
There's
really have to do with, so that got the individual. But the thing is, Armin does have bring up the point, and I was going to say that, when you do have a delusion that's religious, there's something unique about religious delusions that they spread to other people, right? They spread to other
mm,
people. If you have a schizophrenic delusion about, someone's, this person who's knocking on the door wants to kill me, or, the government is trying to read my thoughts and they've implanted a chip in my brain, like those kinds of things. Those are things that are not going to necessarily gain mass appeal. But if you come out and you're schizophrenic, you very convincingly believe that you are the next prophet, you will have a lot of people lining up behind you to support
mm.
you. So yes. Uh,
So Ali, because you have like not much time left, let's try to give shorter answers to the
yeah,
remaining questions. Okay.
coolio. Mir Jalal is saying about the episode on the U.S. airstrike, the hypocrisy of some people in the left, e.g., Kyle and Jimmy Dore, is astonishing. They scream at the top of their lungs only when the U.S. bombs their guy Assad.
Yes,
That's
that's actually a very good point. Like you would think that as anti-American they are, they would have like highlighted that a lot more. Like people think like we are like, yes, United States number one, where we are not. We're like constantly like bring attention to war crimes by United States government, and these other platforms that are supposed to be anti-US, they're not highlighting these obvious crimes that we are, because they just, they're just feeding into a narrative. It doesn't really work for them unless United States is bombing the guy that they hate the most. Yeah, that's actually a very good point, Manager. I didn't think about that. Ali, do you want to add anything? But yeah, that's a
no.
very good
Let's
point.
move on.
All right, next.
Again from Mir Jalal, while they're absolutely mum in this case. Oh, I think this is a continuation
Yeah,
of the
okay,
other one.
continue.
Yeah, so also the U.S. had bombed a mosque in Al Nusra, a controlled region in Idlib, but the same non-interventionist leftists don't care. Yeah, that's exactly what
Amazing.
we're saying.
That's a
Yeah.
very interesting point. Yeah.
All right. So Average Joe is asking, where do you see the JCPOA going now?
So we talked about this already enough today, but yes, I know a lot of people want to like hear about this more. So Ali, I think we should dedicate an entire stream to this. This is escalating very fast.
Let's do it.
One problem with I'm doing a stream about this is that as soon as things are changing so fast, that as soon as we do a stream, within like days, things are going to change, right? So that's why we have to time this stream on this very carefully, and we're not going to be successful at timing it perfectly. But yeah,
Okay.
we will dedicate an entire show to this. Thank you for bringing this up. Okay, next.
All right. Cool. So what is your opinion on Thomas Sowell? Which black intellectuals do you follow to form your opinions on race in America? Um, I have an answer to this. Like it's not
I didn't
super
check
long.
people's skin color when I decide to listen to
Yeah,
dialogue.
that's another thing. I don't really like it. There's some of them, everybody has something to say. Like I do like Ta-Nehisi Coates and some of the stuff he says. I like some of the stuff
Oh, I
John
don't.
McWhorter says. Like no,
Oh,
everybody has
yeah,
something to contribute.
that one.
John McWhorter,
Yes,
Glenn
he's
Lowry,
good.
like all those guys. I mean, they're great. But here's the thing. I don't know, man. Armin, when I grew up, this is weird. We didn't have the internet. We talked about that when we didn't have the internet. In the 1980s, I think I may have talked about this. The favorite show, I was in Saudi Arabia. Favorite show that was on TV was The Cosby Show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Michael Jackson, Prince were the biggest music stars. But Eddie Murphy was the biggest comedian and the biggest movie star, Beverly Hills Cop and all that stuff. You had Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, all these guys. I actually thought that these guys had this sort of talent. I was so shocked when there's this one guy in my class named Tarquin Zaraka. He couldn't sing in tune, and I freaked out. I
Okay,
was
but
almost
that's
racist.
separate. Okay,
No,
no,
but
but
I'm
Mitchell.
that's
Yeah,
the thing. Like those are the kinds of things, the real sort of lived experience. When you have it, I mean that's what I've always used to form my opinion. It's never really been listening to it. I don't know.
I really like when I'm actually, this is something that I'm really more recently have realized that I need to be proud of myself of, right? Because I keep I only start thinking about people's ethnicity or gender when somebody makes that the topic of the discussion. You know what I mean? Like if somebody is saying something and I'm like, oh my god, this is such a good point, I never think like, oh wow, good, like like it's good that I am a fan of somebody who's Pakistani or saying this, or like, oh great, this black guy I'm a fan of. It's good that I'm adding a black person to my portfolio of the people who I listen to. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't even cross my mind whether like, oh, it's a woman. Oh, good. I'm like, oh, this person is a woman and it's a good thing here. So it's a good thing that I'm following her, because or else my portfolio of the people I follow is completely womanless. I'm like, oh, how shameful. It's good. Like I only start noticing that, oh yeah, apparently like, this percent of the people I follow are women if somebody actually highlights it. Other than that, it doesn't seem like it's relevant to anything. Like why is that? Why is that a thing? Like somebody's either making a good point or they're not. Like how is that? How is that part of the equation at all? Like why does that even matter? I don't know why it would matter. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a question about Thomas Sowell. Like, I wonder, can I say one more thing about Thomas Sowell? Like, I'll tell you, there's one thing, for example, that he said. There's a lot of things he said that make sense. There's one thing he said that was, he said that black people are better off in America, black people whose ancestors were slaves. So slavery was actually good for them because they're better off now than the people in Africa, which is, to me, is a little nuts. I may be factually correct, but that's like saying that, the Jewish people who are in the U.S., they benefited from what happened in World War II. I mean, it's just, so there are things that there's a lot of these sort of gotcha statements that I don't really like about him.
It's kind of like saying, like, imagine you get, like, I don't know, somebody comes and sexually abuses you, and because of this experience, you try to go and help the whole world and help like more victims of abuse, and you actually save more people. And somebody comes like, oh, well, maybe it was a good thing that somebody abused you because now you're helping so many other people.
Malala won the Nobel Prize, right? It's like, well,
Oh,
what a great thing that she got shot in the head by the Taliban.
You want to thank the Taliban for that?
It's just,
right? So yeah, that's what it sounds like. No, but again, my main point is, like, we're discussing Thomas Sowell because he has black skin. Like, we're not like, the way that the question is being formed is like, we're not just discussing him whether he has good ideas or bad ideas. He's a topic of discussion because of the color of his skin, which I think, like, if you want to discuss somebody, it shouldn't really matter what ethnicity they are. They either have good ideas or bad ideas. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter, right?
Yeah. And just to read a collection of essays called Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin. If there's one person who I really like, I think he's absolutely fantastic. 60s civil rights leader, black man who was also gay. It's just amazing, amazing man.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We should do it faster. Yeah. So, okay. So here.
D. Boudreau is asking your thoughts on DC Attorney General suing Proud Boys and Oath Keepers over January 6th.
I didn't know this was happening.
Yeah, and I honestly don't like that. I haven't even been following that January 6th.
I haven't been following this, but suing them depends on suing them for what, and the details of the case. And so that's if it's a bad lawsuit, then it's going to benefit them. That's what I could tell.
Yeah, we'll worry about it in 2024. I'm just way too exhausted with this stuff now.
Guy, I'm going to be so, if Trump comes back, Ellie, I'm going to be so exhausted in covering him. Like,
oh no, we can't do it.
Oh my God, Trump.
It'd be good for Iran. It'd be excellent for Iran.
You mean not Iran, for the Islamic Republic of Iran?
The Islamic Republic of Iran, not the Iran.
Yeah, not for this would be not good for Iran. Yeah, it would be good for the government. Yeah. Anyways, let's continue.
Bir Jalal, did you watch the Joe Rogan episode with Dr. Sanjay Gupta and recently with Dr. Peter McCullough? What do you think? Please answer in code language afraid of censorship. The whole thing with Sanjay Gupta, I think Sanjay Gupta is right about mostly everything. He actually really is right about mostly everything. Joe Rogan, not so much. I haven't seen the Peter McCullough guy. I don't know what's going on.
I think it was so hypocritical of Joe Rogan. Like, he's somebody that is spreading so irresponsibly, spreading information about something that he's not an expert of, knowing that he has such an audience that could affect people's lives, right? And all of the misinformation that he's spreading, he's worried about one misphrasing of CNN about one of his opinions, right? And he's like so butthurt over that. But on average, CNN is getting more things right compared to Joe Rogan. So for him to jump on something only because, and look at how butthurt he is over something that was like misrepresentation of his views, just because, like, oh, his feelings are hurt. Well, you Joe Rogan, the misinformation you're spreading is hurting more than people's feelings, right? And you're getting butthurt over one wrong information, over a misrepresentation of your views, and it's not like, how is that going to cost you? You are already like, so like, you're worried about people just not taking you as seriously because of what CNN is saying, while you're spreading information that could cost people's lives. Like, look at how, like, you're such a hypocrite.
Sanjay Gupta is a very, very smart man, and he's very measured and very careful about what he says. Listen to him; he knows what he's talking about.
Well, I mean, we'll always be somewhat skeptical, but still.
Sure, skeptically, but. Okay. Nick Kano is saying, what happens if Trump comes back in 2024? Oh, man. It'll just be fatigue, I think. Like, are you going to care? Like, what's going to...
Yeah, of course I'm going to care. No, I mean, okay, so what's going to happen in relation to what? Like, first of all, if things go the way, if the elections happen today, Trump will win probably. Okay, so I don't know what things have to change for Trump not to win, but right now, as of right now, things don't look good. Okay, things are not good, and that, the response to that one simple question could be like 5 hour, like what will happen in relation to what? The Middle East, to China, to Europe, to taxes in the United States, to what? Like
Democracy.
each one of these democracy, to the Supreme Court. Oh my God, to the Supreme Court. Oh no.
So
Oh
look
crap.
at what happened to the Supreme Court already. I mean, come on. Nobody's
Yeah,
going to
I
be.
mean,
Stephen
like
Breyer's not going to retire. It's not going to
I
happen in the
can't
next
think
few
of a
years.
single. Okay, so each one of these questions by itself, it's a 1 hour, 2 hour stream. Okay, the short answer is that I can't think of anything good. That's the short answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Ali, we
Um,
have to go like really short, really short.
yeah. Yeah. We have 10 more minutes. We're good.
Yeah.
So Sri Ram PS is asking, was the U.S. invasion of Iraq a mistake?
Yes.
The answer is yes. It was.
There we go. Easy short answer.
Jim Waxer is saying, is there anything like spilled semen being a sin in Islam like it is in Christianity? Is
No.
there anything that would bar good sex robots in Islam? Would it considered be adultery for men to have sex with robots? Yeah, well, this is the challenge. This is the problem with religion. It doesn't anticipate this stuff. So I guess they'd look at. There's a comedian named Mark Norman who actually talked about this. He's like, the Bible. You look at it and like, can we have sex with gay people? No. Gay people, no. Incest, no. All this other stuff. But robots, because it's not in the Bible, they're like, well, I guess, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so actually, I just want to say, yeah, there's no, it's not a sin in Islam, but Aisha was responsible for washing Muhammad's clothes off of from his semen. There was a lot of semen on Muhammad's clothes, and Aisha has reported in authentic hadith that she had to constantly wash it off. That's all I can tell you. Okay, I do want to highlight this one. This is really funny. One of the okay, so here's the thing. Okay, I'm going to read this. Okay. Vintan is saying you should learn about Indian and Pakistan history. You suck on it. Okay, Vintan, we know more about you, more than you, about the history of Pakistan and India, because we know it's not something that you could suck on. Okay, so that's how at least we know enough about the history of Pakistan and India to know that it's not something that you could suck on. So let you know about it. Okay, but let's continue. Yeah.
Okay, Megumin is saying, guys, what's your view on Nassim Nicholas Taleb? He considers Steven Pinker an IYI, intellectual yet idiot. He also refers to Seneca the Younger and Stoicism in Anti-Fragile.
I don't know about this guy. What is this?
I think he's had some spats here or there. Yeah.
We don't know enough about it to be able to comment on it. So we have to really answer these.
Megumin is also saying, and while we're at it, what's your view on Stoicism? I'm taking Seneca the Younger and Marcus Aurelius.
I think it's an interesting thing to consider. However, I don't like virtue ethics. Stoicism promotes virtue ethics. I think utilitarianism is the way to go. If you follow a virtue just because it's a virtue, you're going to get to some ridiculous conclusions where if you actually look at the consequences of your actions, you might come up with the conclusion that you need to do something other than being completely loyal to a certain virtue just because it's a virtue. Virtue ethics doesn't make sense. I still do think there's value in Stoicism. You could learn things from it. Also, Stoicism denies the human nature to some extent. Like it takes it to extreme ways. Like sometimes demonstration of anger and frustration is healing. Stoicism ignores that. Stoicism wants you to completely be detached from the things that you can't control. Like if you, for example, let's say something bad happens to you in the world and you can't control it, so therefore you should not react to it. You should not be angry of it. But sometimes the anger is the point. Sometimes showing the frustration, showing the anger, even if you can't change it, what you can change is you putting out the frustration out there and demonstrating your frustration. It by itself is the point. Like it maybe can't change the world, but it does have a healing impact. So that's something that Stoicism completely ignores, right? So, and also Stoics were against Epicureans, And I think Epicureanism had morality and ethics more accurately because they were closer to utilitarianism relative to virtue ethics. Virtue ethics might make sense if you have to choose the virtues based on that you are loyal to based on the utility that they have. But if that's how you do virtue ethics, then your virtue ethics is basically rule utilitarianism, which is the best kind of utilitarianism. At that point, it would be the same thing.
Okay.
Anyways, sorry, I went for too long.
So again, what's your views on Daniel Kahneman? So this is a lot. And Cass Sunstein, Nudge, are their views practical according to you? Daniel Kahneman, I'm more familiar with, so I would say yes. I think his whole thing, and that's the others I'm not as familiar with.
All right, let's move on.
Eunice Backer is saying, couldn't there be truths which are unfalsifiable, especially truths from spiritually awakened people when they've experienced something which we haven't? The answer is yes, many of them can be true, but we just don't know. And if we don't know, we can't say. So we go under the assumption that, yes, there are things left to be, there are truths out there left to be discovered. And you continue to design whatever experimentation you can to try and discover them. But if you can't, we shouldn't assume that they're true. We shouldn't operate on that assumption. That doesn't mean that you can't be agnostic about them. Science, like that's the thing about the scientific method, is that it's agnostic. It's not, it doesn't make a claim when there's no evidence to make it.
If there is a truth, but when it comes to truths that are unfalsifiable, you have to take them as seriously as you would take the existence of, I don't know, Peter Pan, fairies, Santa Claus, right? If
could be true.
Yeah. So like you the problem is that people act like if a truth is unfalsifiable, then it's 50-50, right? You have to treat it as 1 over infinity. So it's not 0, but it's so close to 0 that you can't take it seriously, even if it's true. You have to act like if pragmatically it would make sense for you to treat it as if it's the possibility of it is 0. Yeah. So there we go.
Average Joe is saying, Armin, I know you have a finance background. Can you do a stream on 2008 financial crisis and the effects?
Well, okay, I'm not gonna do 2008 because that has been done over and over again. Okay, but what I'm gonna do on my personal channel, on the Armin Navabi channel, I was trying to think of things that I could do with my personal channel that is maybe not done as much. And given my background and given that this content doesn't seem to exist because I was looking for it more and more. And when I kept failing to find good content, I was like, hey, wait a minute, I can make this. And the content that I want to make is in defense of capitalism against, and start making content against communism and against socialism, right? Because right now, if you search on YouTube for capitalism, communism, you see like such a rise in defense of communism in recent years. In the past couple of years, communism has become a lot more popular. And when you want to see anti-communism, pro-capitalism content, most of what you find is like these right-leaning conservatives defending capitalism in the most cringiest, dogmatic, ideological ways, and from people that don't even have a basic understanding of economics, right? They're just defending it because they're like, I guess they're supposed to, because that they're part of their tribe, and they defend it in just as if it's a religion or something, like not for, it's just it's so cringe and it's so dogmatic, like, and there's not that much good defense of capitalism out there, right? And I want like a left-leaning person like me defend capitalism, and maybe from economic perspective rather than ideological. So that's one thing I want to do on my personal channel, Armin Navabi YouTube channel. That's something that I'm looking forward to in doing. So that's what I will do.
Okay, so last question, and then after that we'll do our recommendations and then wrap it up. Megumin is saying, Ali Rizvi, do you listen to and or like heavy metal music? If so, which band? I absolutely love heavy metal music, always have. I grew up on it. I generally like the older stuff. I'm an old man. The newer stuff I like is actually mostly non-metal, but I love, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, Sepultura, Corrosion of Conformity. You name it. Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is actually still absolutely amazing. They've been around for years, and they probably just released one of their best songs called "The Writing on the Wall" recently. on their last album. So yeah, I absolutely do. And thank you for asking that.
That's good.
Yeah,
All right.
that's
So,
it.
recommendations of the week. I would suggest. Okay, so this is something that I'm not going to consume because I have a lot on my list, but I saw it come on Wondrium and I was very excited, and I was so sad that I will never have the time to watch it. Wondrium just released the course. Wondrium is basically formerly known as the Great Courses. A lot of people know it as the Great Courses, but they just came out with like a. And for people who don't know, Wondrium is a platform, or the Great Courses, where university professors, like some of the best university professors in the world, come and teach you courses on different topics. And I enjoy it more than books now, more than audiobooks, because it's also visual. You have a professor with presentations, with graphics and pictures. And it's like, I'm not being anti-intellectual when I say like this is better than books, because these are university professors. So it's not anti-intellectual, okay? But it's really good. And it comes with course notes that you could take if you want to later refer to something that you might have forgot. The course notes are there for you to download as well. But the recent course that they just came out with is Norse mythology, right?
Oh,
So, yeah, if you're interested in Norse mythology, which I wish, because I wish I had time for that course, because I'm finishing other courses right now. I'm taking some courses on economy because to prepare myself for my personal channel at some point, to make more like refresher on the things I learned in school, so I could like talk about these things better on my personal account at some point. But yeah, if you're interested in Norse mythology and you want like a university lecture on it, by the way, use a link in the description. You get 2 weeks for free, so you could take these courses. Um, and if you don't like it, you don't have to pay for it. 2 weeks for free, you could take courses to see if you like Wondrium or not. And if you use the link in the description, Atheist Republic will get some bonus, get paid a little bit, even if you don't continue with the course, even if you don't pay. So try it out. It's free. It's the best way of learning. So Wondrium has courses on everything: on economy, on philosophy, on history, on knitting, on many on art, everything. But the courses that on science, on quantum physics, but they usually bring the best professors to teach you these relevant topics, right? So check the reviews on different courses and check them out. Yeah, somebody's saying, "Wow, yeah, like, yeah, music guy, check out Wondrium, Norse mythology. If you're into mythology, check this one out, Norse mythology. Link in the description. Make sure you use a link in the description. Don't go at somewhere else and search for Wondrium and pick it. Use the link in the description so that we get some affiliate money from that. Yeah, go on.
okay. So yeah, I've got two. The first one is I was nowadays for me a lot of it is comedic stuff. So if you guys want entertainment, Curb Your Enthusiasm, the new season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think it's season 11. It is irreverent. If you like religious mockery, he's doing it. He's doing it mainstream. Larry David, he's absolutely hilarious. He comes from a Jewish background, so he makes a lot of fun of the Jewish community and the Jewish religion. He makes a lot of fun of people who are religious in general. It's just absolutely hilarious. I mean, the new season is phenomenal, and it gets better and better with every episode. So it's excellent. That's one thing I would recommend. It's on HBO and Crave in Canada if you're in Canada. And the second thing is a comedian named Mark Normand. Go on Instagram, follow him, Mark Normand, Normand. I don't think he is possible for him not to be funny. You'll just be laughing your ass off continuously. And he's a really smart guy too. And I think he's playing. He's playing in Toronto actually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. He's got 4 shows in 3 days. So I think I actually might go and see him one of these days. Probably Sunday. I'll make it. I don't have a lot going on. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. Yeah, that's my recommendations. Mark Normand and Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Guys, make sure you like this video, make sure you share our content, make sure you subscribe, make sure you tell people to check our channel. If you like this video, it doesn't cost you anything and really helps our channel grow, so please make sure you do that. If you want to support us, or if you just want to get priority in the questions that we answer, check out our Patreon, link in the description. But if you can't support us financially, that's fine. Just make sure you don't leave without liking the video, okay? Like, it's really not that hard. Just tap it. I've been told, Ali, by the way, that you don't actually need to smash the like button. I've been told that if you just tap on it, it still works as well. So I don't know if that's true. You might as well try. I heard
Fantastic.
like it was unnecessary to smash it. Apparently,
I am
didn't
just
know that.
naturally
So
very violent. But if you enjoyed this and you stuck around, I mean, do consider going to patreon.com/sjme and becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month. You get like 5 to 6 live streams here, including several Q&As like this, if you really enjoy them. And you're able to support us and we can do more of this stuff. And if you can't make it for the live streams, you can ask your questions ahead of time, put them on Patreon. And as you can see, the way we did today, we will prioritize it. We'll ask them first. So just right now, go down, like this video. If you're listening to it on your podcast app, please give us a rating. And I also want to mention, last thing, it is Christopher Hitchens' death anniversary today. I think he died in 2011, so it's been quite a while now, and he is still sorely missed. So
yes, don't smoke and drink, everybody. That's a lesson.
Yeah,
okay,
that's true.
Yes. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone. Be best. Be best.
Be best,
everyone.
and we'll see you. Yeah, we'll see you next week. We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.